The main importance of this topic is for us hoteliers being knowledgeable about air transportations, specifically the domestic airlines. Also, by this topic, we will be aware with our rights as a passengers, and we will know some of our responsibilities as a future attendant. We would also explore space tourism, which I know new to your ears, and yes, space tourism do exist. And lastly, we would be aware what government agency is responsible with air transportations.
This is SHAWN MICHAEL PEREZ PINGOL. Domestic airlines. Basically, they handles only domestic flights within the same country. Domestic airlines are basically their airlines which has a flight that arrives within the same country. For example, here in the Philippines, we have domestic airlines such as Philippine Airlines, Cebu Pacific, and Philippine Air Asia. Right, for example of the travel like Tacloban to Bohol. So that is the meaning of domestic airlines. So in other words, domestic airlines or flights is the one that stays within the same country. But some countries or regions do not have any published domestic flights or airports or even public domestic flights due to its size or political reasons. Examples are Belgium, Kuwait, Hungary, Luxembourg, Serbia, Singapore, Slovakia, and United Arab Emirates. There are three popular domestic airlines here in the Philippines. The first one is Philippine Air Asia. Founded in 2010, the airline is the affiliate of Air Asia, a low-cost airline based in Malaysia. The airline lets you fly in comfort within the economy and business fares, as well as in flight menu and upgrade services. The airlines operate a vast network throughout the Philippines, and its main hub is at Mactan Cebu International Airport, and they have also secondary hub. Moving on to the second one is the Philippine Airlines, the most popular airlines here in the Philippines also. It is a flag carrier of the Philippines and operates to 31 destinations throughout the islands. If you want to travel in comfort, Philippine Airlines offers class economy in comfort. Philippine Airlines also offers business classes as well as onboard services such as entertainment systems and comprehensive menu selections. And the airline operates at its main hub at Ninoy Aquino International Airport, and they have also another hubs or secondary hubs. Moving on to the third part is Cebu Pacific. Cebu Pacific operates numerous flights out of its hub in Cebu City. If you're exploring the islands, this could be beneficial as it saves effort of backtracking to Manila. For example, you can fly straight from Cebu City to Caticlan for Boracay and Siargao. Cebu Pacific currently flies to 37 domestic destinations, and its main hub is at the following. Why choose domestic flights within the Philippines? The Philippines is composed of thousands of islands. Luckily, there are numerous budget airlines that fly nowadays between all major destinations. So in other words, traveling throughout the Philippines archipelago is actually really easy and much cheaper. And if you still see breathtaking view of God's creation, majestic islands, aside from that, they also offers quality service and offer drinks and snacks. So what are you waiting for? Choose Philippines.
Transportation has been one of the mode of transportations that booms because of its convenience in traveling from place to place. Almost all of us prefer to use this mode than others, especially when we travel long distances. But as the number of passengers increases, the number of complaints also increases. So in order to relieve the issue, In 2012, our government codified and strengthened our airline passengers' rights. The Department of Transportation, in coordination with the Department of Trade and Industry, approved the Joint DOTC-DTI Administrative Order Number 1, Series of 2012, which is also known as the Air Passengers Bill of Rights. This is to protect the rights of passengers in airlines. So there are three major rights of passengers. The first one is the right to be provided with accurate information before the purchase. The second is the right to receive the full value of service purchase. And lastly, the right to compensation. So let's go deep with those, and let's start with the first major right, which is the right to be provided with accurate information before the purchase. It is very important that passengers be informed of the specific details of airline tickets with the terms and conditions. It should be clear to them what kind of ticket they purchase. Is it a regular ticket or a promo ticket? Is it rebookable, reroutable, refundable? What is the ticket's expiry or validity? What are the seats available? What is the travel period? And other conditions. Because accurate information aids the passenger to make the right decision whether they will purchase the ticket or not. So airlines have the obligation to inform and explain into the passengers the terms and conditions, including the restrictions of their tickets. But passengers also have the obligation to read them. It is very important that passengers be informed of the specific details of airline tickets with the terms and conditions. It should be clear to them what kind of ticket they purchase. Is it a regular ticket or a promo ticket? Is it rebookable, reroutable, refundable? What is the ticket's expiry or validity? What are the seats available? What is the travel period? And other conditions. Because accurate information aids the passenger to make the right decision whether they will purchase the ticket or not. So airlines have the obligation to inform and explain into the passengers the terms and conditions, including the restrictions of their tickets. But passengers also have the obligation to read them. So let's proceed to the next major right, which is the right to receive the full value of service purchase. When we book our ticket, we will be informed about its inclusions, and maybe that is one of our reasons why we purchased that ticket. So basically, it is our right as a passenger to get what we paid for. To elaborate this right, these are the rights under the second major. So the first one is the right to be processed for check-in. A passenger shall not be considered late or no-show and shall not be denied. A passenger shall not be considered late or no-show and shall not be denied for check-in if he or she is within the carrier's cordon or other designated check-in area at least 1 hour before the estimated time of departure. Passenger must know that extra 2 hours that they often used. A passenger shall not be considered late or no-show and shall not be denied for check-in if he or she is within the air carrier's cordon or other designated check-in area 1 hour before the estimated time of departure. Passengers must know that the extra 2 hours they are often advised to be at the airport is actually essential, because there might be some long queues at the check-in counter, and the Bureau of Immigration may also question some documents of the passengers. So one really needs to allot extra time. A passenger was considered late may be denied for check-in, but he or she should be directed to our booking counter. The next right that we should always remember is the right to sufficient processing time. In international airports and other airports designated by DOTC, their check-in counters must be open at least 2 hours before the estimated time of departure. A separate dedicated counter must be open for a flight nearing check-in deadline to facilitate the checking in of passengers at least 1 hour before the estimated time of departure published. There must also at least one check-in counters, which will be prioritizing PWDs, senior citizens, and persons requiring special assistance or handling if applicable. But for those with small airports who can provide this additional counter, they must always prioritize those people in the lane. However, these passengers must note that not all of their companions will be accommodated with in the priority lane. Of course, if they are with 10 people, for example, not all of them will be accommodated because a PWD does not need 10 people to assist him or her. And lastly, and for those other airports, their check-in counters must be open at least 1 hour before the estimated time of departure. And the last right under the second major is the right to board aircraft for the purpose of flight. Always remember this general rule. A passenger cannot be denied the right to board the aircraft without his or her consent. Therefore, it is the passenger's decision to go on board or not. However, there are exceptions if when there is a legal or other valid cause such as immigration issues, safety and security, health concerns, and non-appearance at the boarding gate at the appointed time. In terms of health concerns, passenger who is sick but is not infectious should be allowed to board the aircraft. And also, overbooking. It is an accepted practice for air carriers to overbook flights, but no passengers may be bumped off from the flight without his or her consent. The airline should look for volunteers willing to give up their seats and give them appropriate compensation package. And that is what we called the auction system.
Good day, this is CZARINNA PEREZ and I'm here to discuss the right to compensation. First, right to compensation and amenities in case of cancellation of flight. Cancellation at least 24 hours before the ATD attributable to the air carrier, a passenger shall have the right to be notified beforehand via public announcement, written or published notice, and flight status update service, and be given the option to rebook or reimburse. If cancellation is less than 24 hours before the estimated time of departure attributable to the air carrier, passengers have the right to be notified beforehand of the fact of cancellation and to amenities which may include food and drinks and hotel accommodations. Reimbursement of the value of the fare, including taxes and surcharges, and other optional fees. Passengers may be also endorsed to another air carrier without paying any fare difference. Airlines should also rebook their tickets without additional charge to the next flight available. If the flight was cancelled and it was not the airline's fault, example, caused by typhoon or due to security reasons, passengers may refund the value of the fare, including taxes and surcharges. They can also rebook their ticket. Second, right to compensation and amenities in case of flight delay and exceptions thereto. For delays at least 3 hours, whether or not the carrier is at fault, they are entitled to refreshments or meals, sufficient snacks, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, as the case may be, free phone calls and emails, and first aid if necessary. Airlines should also rebook their tickets without additional charge to the next flight available or within 30 days. They can also opt to refund the fare value, including taxes and surcharges. Passengers may also be endorsed to other air carrier without paying any fare difference. In case such terminal delay of at least 6 hours after the ATD for causes attributable to the carrier, it shall be deemed cancelled to the purpose of making available to the passenger the right and amenities required to be provided in case of actual cancellation. Additional compensation equivalent to at least the value of the sector delayed or deemed cancelled to be paid in form of cash or voucher, and the affected passenger can also board the flight if he or she is not opt to rebook or refund. For tarmac delay for at least 2 hours, the airline should provide them with sufficient food and beverages. Third, right to compensation for delayed, lost, or damaged baggage. The passenger has the right to be informed of the fact of offloading. The air carrier shall inform the passenger in such manner that the passenger will know the offloading. And for every 24 hours of delay in such delivery, the passenger shall receive 2,000 peso compensation. And if the baggage was not delivered within 24 hours from the arrival of the flight, the passenger will be refunded and checked baggage fees. If the baggage is lost or suffered any damage, relevant convention shall apply for international flights, while for domestic flights, the equivalent amount is pesos shall apply. If the passenger does not receive the baggage after a period of 7 days, it is presumed lost. Fourth, right to compensation in case of death or bodily injury of a passenger. For international flight, in case of death or bodily injury sustained by a passenger, the relevant convention and inter-carrier agreement shall apply. For domestic flights, the compensation shall be based on the stimulated amount in the relevant convention which governs international flights, the same to be given in peso denominations. Lastly, right to immediate payment of compensation. Payment must be available to the affected passenger at the air carrier's counters at the airport on the date when the incident occurred, or at the main office or any branch of air carrier at the discretion of the passenger. Compensation could either by tendering a check for the amount specified or in a form of cash, or the document necessarily to claim the compensation or benefits, provided that such document shall be convertible to cash within 15 days from the date when the occasion occurred. That would be all. Thank you.
Let's talk about the space tourism. Space tourism is a recreational space travel either on established government-owned vehicles such as the Russian Soyuz and the International Space Station, or companies fielded with a private companies. In other words, space tourism is the activity of the space travel for recreational purposes, and to enjoy climbing the vast expanse of the universe without collecting the samples of moons, dust, and look for the intelligent life. Instead, you can sit back, relax, and enjoy. The advent of the space tourism occurred at the end of 1990s with the deal of the Russian company Mir Corporation and the American company Space Adventures. This kind of travel will be available to ultra-rich person. Why? Because space tourism is the most expensive kind of travel compared to the land or air travel that mostly you can spend only 1,000 or 100. Unlike in space that one ticket is equivalent for 55 million dollars. It can give the tourist the ability to become an astronaut and witness some astronomical objects. And they use a large panels of solar cells and the banks of batteries as their source of electrical power. On April 28, 2001, Dennis Tito became the first fee-paying space tourist when he visited the International Space Station or the ISS for 7 days. And space tourism has gained new prominence as more suborbital and orbital tourism opportunities have become available. How or what to prepare? If you are qualified to be an astronaut or a space tourist, you need to undergo some preparation for you to be prepared before traveling in space. And the first step that you need to do is to pass the physical examination. So why it is important to pass the physical examination? So the company will really want to make sure that the person is physically fit if they don't have any problem about their health. Second is the training several days to a few weeks after the test. In space tourism, training is essential. You need to be trained for you to be familiarized on how to use the equipment properly. And these people can't be space tourists. Minors, people with serious heart problems, and people with severe vertigo or claustrophobia. So, here are the example of the space tourism. The first example is the rocket launching. Did you know that the first rocket launching which could fly high enough to get into space was the V-2 missile, which was the first launched by Germany in 1942. The first rocket which actually launched something into space was used to launch Sputnik, the first satellite on October 4, 1957. The rocket that launched Sputnik was R-7 ICBM rocket. The second one is the Air and Space Virtual Tour, is where you can enjoy a variety of online programs, stories, videos, and activities, virtual tours, and resources from us here to at Air and Space Virtual Tour. And the last one is the stargazing, is where you can observe or imaging celestial objects in the sky using binoculars or telescope.
I am IVERSON L. OCANG from BSHM 3rd year Eco. So, these are the three types of space tourism. First is orbital space tourism. As of 2021, Space Adventures and SpaceX are the only companies to have coordinate tourism flights to Earth's orbit. Virginia-based and Space Adventures has worked with Russia to use its Soyuz spacecraft to fly ultra-wealthy individuals to the International Space Station. Second is suborbital space tourism. Although the orbital space tourism industry garnered much media attention following Titus flight, or other companies were also hard at work trying to make space tourism a profitable proposition by developing suborbital vehicles designed to take passengers to an altitude of 100 km to 62 miles. And the last one is lunar space tourism. Lunar space tourism, it may be possible in the future if trips to the moon are made available to a private audience. Some space tourism startup companies are planning to offer tourism on and around the moon and estimate this to be possible sometime between 2023 and 2043.
Everyone, my name is Christian Clark RABAGO from BSHM 3 Eco, and we are the Group 5 reporters. Now, let's move out to main government agency concerning air transport. Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines was created by virtue of Republic Act No. 9497, which was approved in March 4, 2008. It was known before as Air Transportation Office. CAAP is an agency under Department of Transportation, which focuses on the regulation of air travel in the Philippines. Here are some of the responsibilities and functions of the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines. CAAP is responsible for implementing policies on civil aviation in order to ensure safe and efficient travel, and also is the primary safety regulator. They make sure airplanes and pilots are competent and the airlines are safe. Also, they mandate and operate the Civil Aviation Training Center. They recruit air traffic controllers and air navigation engineers. In air traffic controllers, it requires a bachelor's degree to participate, and they will have an exam to join the program, which is around 8 months. It will be conducted around in the country. As you know, in the Philippines is an archipelago, and we have many airports. Thus, CAAP keeps on recruiting these competent people to navigate the airways and to have more safety travels in the country. And the air navigational engineers. This requires a higher degree to take in the exam. These professionals are the ones who maintain and fix the air navigation equipments, which is a very complex radar system. And the other function is that they operate air navigation services, which known as traffic controllers. As you can see in the airports, there are towers inside, and these people who guide the airplanes to make sure that the takeoff and landing are safe. CAAP also hold the most airports here in the Philippines, which is we have 85 airports, and about 80 of those are held by CAAP. excluding Clark, Mactan, Naiya, Subic, and Katiklan.
So, for a brief review of what we discussed, these are some of the things we must remember. Again, domestic airlines are those airlines that travels or flies only inside the country. There are 3 airlines existing in our country. What are those? AirAsia, Cebu Pacific, and Philippine Airlines. And also for the Air Passenger Bill of Rights, there are 3 major rights. What are those? The right to be provided with accurate information before the purchase, the right to receive the full value of service purchase, and lastly, the right to compensations. We also tackled about space tourism, where a person named Dennis Tito was the first fee-paying space tourist that was on April 28, 2001. And what are the 3 types of space tourism? First one is the orbital, the second is suborbital, and the last one is lunar space tourism. And lastly, the government agency that focuses on the regulation of air travel in the Philippines is the CAAP, or the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines. So I think that's it. I hope you've learned something about our discussion. If you have any questions with regards to our report, feel free to raise it in the comment section.